Hello, the News Minute is here today with filmmaker Rajiv Menon, who is back with Sarvam Thala Mayam after a gap of 18 years. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. You've made 3 films after a long gap. Why so?
The gap that happened between Kandukutin and this as a director, was totally not intentional. It's just that I tried under various scripts and with various actor combinations, small films, big films. I tried so many things, musicals, Hindi here, but for some reason, they just kept getting postponed. It was as though the jinx that Manohar was facing in Kandukutin, Ajit's character, was happening to me myself. I was amazed how that was happening. I kept writing and I kept trying. I think I write better now than what I was before. But all I can say is that it wasn't that I was on a cruise, or it wasn't that I was chilling somewhere. I was struggling, really struggling to get. But for some reason, various projects just kept getting into some roadblock or the other. But now I'm glad that we have a script and we could shoot it, and eventually we had to produce it ourselves. So it wasn't like the easiest period, but I've got past it now. And I think I have a story which is powerful enough to tell.
We heard Sarvam Thala Mayam is about a Dalit youth who wants to make it big in the music industry, to be more specific, Carnatic. How did this story come to you?
I mean, my film is not a caste issue based film as much as a film about meritocracy, I mean, while I was making a documentary on Umayalpuram, I kind of stumbled upon a gentleman who was hanging around him, and I was shooting in Tanjavur that, there was a guy called Johnson. So there was this Johnson who was being floated around, and then Johnson came with a small bag, and he took out, and he had some screwdrivers and pliers and so many other things with him. And then he went about. So I had this feeling that Johnson was probably an electrician or something, because he had some tools with him. And then we went to have dinner, and early something to eat, and then we went to the show, and then I found this Johnson sitting on stage also. So, my God, it's a very influential electrician that he has got, who's sitting on stage with him, man. And then when I came to Chennai, I found again Johnson being discussed, and then I realized Johnson is the man who repairs his mridangam. And when I started doing the documentary here, then I discovered Johnson is not his repair guy, but he's the man who actually makes his mridangam. Jesus, Johnson makes mridangam which Padma Vibhushan Umayalpuram Shivaraman plays. And the truth of the matter is, world over, drums are basically a circular piece of wood, and it's some stretched leather, and everywhere it's same thing, stretched leather, and somebody beats on it, and the people who play it become famous, and the people who hear it become happy, but the people who make it live in oblivion and on borderline poverty. So what if I were to tell a story so my story is not driven by the caste matrix as much as a story of people who are there making the instrument, but they don't get to play it. And it so happens in this particular case that it also takes a caste angle. But that's not my focus here. My focus is about a drum maker's son wanting to play and what would possibly happen. So I kind of started drawing the parallel between the Dalit who's waiting outside the temple to get in Nandanar, and Peter who's waiting outside the Guru's house to gain entry in. So I started seeing that kind of parallel inside it in my story.
In recent times, we've had filmmakers like Pa Ranjit and Mari Selvaraj, discussing about caste discrimination in their films. And when it comes to portrayal, we've had characters on both ends of the spectrum, where they've shown people with agency, and where they've shown people, being discriminated, and their side of the story. On what end of the spectrum does Sarvam Thala Mayam fall?
While black and white is what you are talking about, I see them as complementary notes on the keyboard. Meaning conflict gives rise to stories, and my statement here is more as an individual who's pursuing the art and then having to deal with his guru and then having to get his trust and then losing it and then struggling back with things. So it is, in that sense, primarily a music film. It is also a social film, and because it's a social film, it also in turn happens to have an issue about caste, but it's never mentioned in my film as a caste film. Caste is never discussed in it never openly stated, but it's implied.
Did you ever think that your perspective on the issue would be that of an outsider's?
Me as an outsider, I don't know, because I listen to a lot of music and I have access to all the musicians who are my friends and things like that. So as far as Carnatic music is concerned, I'm an insider. I mean, but in any story you need conflict. I mean, the story becomes really challenging when and kind of universal when an unexpected person achieves the improbable. I don't think there will be major headlines when Tendulkar's son is going to play for India. I mean, they will, even if he's good, it's obvious he played, or with Mohinder Amarnath playing for India. But there's definitely a story in Dhoni playing for India, somebody from Jharkhand coming and becoming a captain of India. So a state which has won a Ranji Trophy, and somebody from there coming and then becoming the biggest force and then really going to captain is a huge story. Stories are about that. It's about I see it more as a story rather than an indictment of the system. I mean, I don't see it as that.
You've made 2 romance films so far, and you've had Bollywood actors like Aishwarya Rai, Tabu and Kajol in it, and you've chosen Aparna Balamurali in this film. How did you choose her, and how was it working with her?
In the years that have gone by, I was getting more and more fascinated with more kind of a real tone. I mean, I started in a fantasy world in Minsarakan when it became the social aspect of women and coming to the city and working and living and overcoming the feudal barriers was there in Kandakondain, but it still had more of the cinematic world in it. But in this film, I'm going more into the realistic world, and I'm also trying to shoot the film in real sound with real musicians. And it just so happened that the character of the heroine, we tested a lot of girls, and the character of the heroine of the calm alter ego of his very dramatic mother was that of a woman who gives him counsel, advice, and who is this calming influence on him, and she is also the kind of person who is showing the mirror to him. That role, it just so happened that it was she was the one who tested best for it. I didn't make any conscious decision to sort of bring stars into the film, because this film is not a star-driven film. It's a more film which is concept-driven and which is thematically strong.
How was it working with G.V. Prakash Kumar, and how did you cast him in this film?
I did. In fact, I did speak to a few actors, but I knew that nobody was ready to put that kind of time that was required for the preparation, because as I told you, I wanted the film to be real, and the people should play the instrument, and if they're going to play the instrument, they need to work for it. I mean, it's not something that you can do fake it. This hand moves differently and this hand moves differently, and the thing was, GV was already an accomplished keyboard player and he was an accomplished music director, so he's done his grades in Trinity College. So since he has rhythm within him, and In fact, the piano is part of the rhythm section, percussion section in Western classical orchestra. So there is already a certain bass there, but he had to relearn the fingering. And so I put him in touch with Umayalpuram sir, and then he trained for a year. As his person who's playing against him, I've used Sumesh Narayan, who is a accomplished drummer. So he's an accomplished mridangam artist who's playing in Music Academy, who plays for Indo Soul. And so I've got Sikil Gurucharan playing a role in the film. I have got a lot of musicians who are actually playing not their live characters, they're playing somebody else. But so you see live music in the film.
Let's talk about the music in Sarvam Thala Mayam. People have been saying that it sounds like AR Rahman from the 90s. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm very happy that the music has been accepted and people really like it, and they kind of, feel it's vintage AR kind of tracks. Because I think what happens is AR's greatest thing was to have kind of simplicity, and a very clear melodic line. And we were really looking for that in this. It's a, what can I say? Is it a praise or this thing, or what AR thinks about it? I don't think he's excited by somebody saying that 90s Rahman is back. What do you mean? What are we doing? Of course, I've been creating music. But that's something all creators do. And I remember when we went to shoot in somewhere in Bagalkot, we were going to a house to shoot, and we liked a particular house, and that house was going to be flooded anyway in with the dam waters rising. So they said you can shoot, and then the people who owned the house said that we're not going to charge any money, if Mr. Mani Ratnam is going to shoot. But they said we just want to meet him once. So they met Mani and said that, sir, we love that Anuragam film very much, sir. Hey, so Mani also said, and we are not charging any money, you can just take and shoot the house. Okay, Mani said. And then he went inside and he sat inside the house, in the car, and he has head there, What is it, this Manaragam? They say, it looks like I never made any film after that. So I guess for a creator people keep talking of the past is really irritating. So I can understand what AR is saying. But it's just that the fans have a way, that's the way they put out in their word that we really like what you did in the past, and we really like this. That's all they're saying. And I'm glad they like the music.
You've also got a deeper bond with music. You've spoken fondly about your mother, who is a Carnatic musician, and you've composed a song in this film. Tell us about that.
We had a kind of song which is about a student longing for his teacher. It's not a typical situation in a film, in the Indian film construct. I got these 2-3 lines which in Tamil which came into my head, which is again inspired by Nandana Charitam. And when that happened, I asked Madan Karki to come, and he wrote a couple of more lines. And so these used to be next to me on my table while I was writing the rest of the dialogues, and I would keep looking at it. And then mysteriously a tune came in my head, and I recorded it. But then I still thought, am I like crossing the line? Am I like really getting into AR's territory? And so I didn't tell him for a month. I didn't tell him for a month that I've got this tune, and he was also trying. And one day I said that, actually I've got something I've got to tell you. So I've got a tune. So it was like, okay, then sing it. So sing it. Suddenly all the words went out of my head, everything went out of my head, and I had to, I'm not a keyboard player, I can't like play it on keyboard or something. So I had to sing it. And then there was no reaction at all, like he was just quiet, and I was also quiet. And then he said, where is Srini, singer Srini? He started asking. So I didn't know whether he liked it or did not like it. And there was probably the longest pause. By then his assistants were trying to call Srini, and eventually Srini called up, and then he picked the phone and said, hey, what are you doing, Srini? Can you come here in the evening? Rajiv Menon or super tune potrukari, come and record it. So what did AR say? I mean, like, Jesus, he likes my tune, and he's saying he can do it. Like, so I was like, oh my God. Like, so, but okay, we're doing some work for the film. But for him to give me credit, for the tune. That's like a big thing.
And so this film also discusses a specific dialogue on religion and music, and we've got a lot of issues were raised recently when it comes to Carnatic musicians singing Christian songs. How have you dealt with that in your film, and are you anticipating any kind of dissent?
I think the film is very synchronistic. It sort of just say somebody is interested in learning something. It just so happens to be a Christian, but the fact remains that it's that community which makes them mridangam. There's no, you cannot deny it. You cannot deny the fact that in 1920s or 30s they converted to Christianity, but they are the people who make them mridangam, and this is the reality. Now the question is, what if one of them were to come and learn? What if one of them want to perform? Is a question that I'm asking. And well, people are listening to Yeshudas, right? So they are listening to music. I mean, they're listening to AR Rahman also. I mean, come on. I mean, if you're good, you're good. That's it. People listen to Mohammad Rafi in our country. I mean, I don't think our country is polarized that extent, and that's what makes music so great. Music allows you to get past hatred. It unites people. I think there's a great unifying spirit about music.
How was it working with AR Rahman in this film? You two share a long history. You've started your careers together almost. So how is it working with him in this film?
AR now is an international figure. I mean, he's like, you call him, he's in Los Angeles. Next day you see he's somewhere else. As a friend, he knows I'm so keen about music. So he's very patient with me. When I tell him many things, But now, maybe because AR has been working in Hollywood and things like that, he's also very clear in his replies on emails, and so we communicate a lot more with emails and with written information. We're trading back and forth on our ideas. And then we would have these sessions where we talk, and then he would then compose, and then I would react to it, and then we would have 2 or 3 more reactions before we actually go in for recordings. So each song would take a month or 2 to get done. So it took us a year to get the music, and the music was completely finished before I started shooting, which was not the case in Kandubandane or in Minsarakano. We would have 2 songs and we'd start shooting, and then we would be waiting for the song. I didn't have any such complaints with AR in this particular case, because he actually finished all the music for the film well before the shoot.
You've been in the industry for quite some time now, and the recent Me Too movement has outed a lot of big names in the South industry. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think, the industry has been largely male dominated, and it has had a lot of people who have probably had an unfair advantage for a long period of time, and those who have suffered have probably silently suffered. Social media, gives you an ability to cut through the clutter, and you don't need, you can go directly to the people and talk about it. So it is something that is kind of, giving voice to people who have suffered, but the fact is, there is no jury, there is no conviction, there is no judgment, and some people have got convicted, sentenced, and finished also in the process. So it's difficult to say on a thing. Ideologically, it's a movement which was long required in the industry to redress a very can I say, an unfair advantage that some people have had, and a very exploitative tendency had to be stopped. But at the same time, who's going to police people who have been falsely implicated, or this thing is, it's difficult to say anything about this, because unless you know the case specifically and you know what specifically happened there, that's something which we don't know.